Peter, thank you so much for coming. I'll do a little introduction, just say who I am. My name's Ian Puddick. I've been exposing police corruption for many, many years after being brutalised in custody. And then the police obviously didn't deny brutalising me, but they wiped the CCTV and later said they couldn't remember what happened. Well, I remembered. So corruption is an issue that I take very dearly, really. And I've come across Peter, who is just, well, you'll see from the interview, mesmerising, really. I think it's just truly wonderful. I've been so excited. I can't tell you how excited I've been about doing this interview. But before I do that, I was just going to say thank you. And I always forget to say this in front of my videos, so I think I'm doing it for the first time. Please like, share, and subscribe. My YouTube channel isn't monetized, so I don't get anything for this. I do this at my own cost because I enjoy it, and I get to meet some really wonderful people like Peter. And Peter is just, well, you'll see from what Peter has gone through, how he's still smiling and he's saying, I have no idea, but he is, which is a testament to Pete's integrity and strength of character. But I bought Peter's book several years ago. Now, Peter was the mortuary superintendent at Southwark. I keep in my head, I'm saying Southwark Cathedral, at Southwark's mortuary. And when he went there, he just had a shock that just beggars belief, which is what we're going to talk about. He exposed corruption on a level that you just will not believe. And the things that we're going to talk about, you would expect to be happening in some far off land, in some far off place where the rule of law doesn't matter. But Peter exposed it in London. And more importantly, did he not only expose corruption here in London, he exposed it nationally, because there was a culture of corruption within the mortuary service. And I'll let Peter expand on that. So Peter, thank you so much for coming up. We did meet, I'll just tell you how we met first of all. So I bought Peter's book a few years ago, and the first chapter, I put the book down because it was very distressing. I've got a 6-year-old boy, and it was about the murder of a small boy that Peter was involved in working with the police. And I put it down. It was too much for me. And we're not going to say anything gory today or anything like that. And then back in October away, I took the book with me again. I thought, I've got to read this book. And if there's any bits that I don't like, I'll just not read them. I'll just put it down and just fast forward in my head. But I did actually read the book all the way through. And then I thought, I've got to meet him. I've got to meet this. I've got to meet this guy. So I tracked Peter down through Facebook. Thank you, Facebook. So here we are. So we have had a meeting. We've discussed so that I get the story clear in my head. And I've made some notes because there's so much. We're going to be talking about the Cold War and spies turning up with pink tablets in their mouth. And you're there to pick up the pieces. A Nazi. Serial killers in London. We've got a really, really interesting array, but more importantly, we will focus initially on the corruption that Peter had to tackle, almost single-handedly, really, because no one supported you. So, Peter, my first question to you is, where are you from, your upbringing, hiding in a pigsty? Let the viewers know a little bit about your early life.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I must apologise because my voice is going sort of cold. Came on yesterday, sort of laws. So,
immediately forgiven.
Yes, so as long as people can understand and hear me, I'm not some Latvian come over on the boat. So, I do speak English normally. So, having said that, it's a pleasure to be here. My background starts at the end of the Second World War. Quite dramatically, really. There was a lady who was a baker in a small village called Selby in Yorkshire. And she ran the bakers and she provided the bread for the local RAF station at RAF Burn. And one day she got a telegram to say her husband, who was fighting out in Italy, had been killed in action. Now, after this, she started having a liaison, a relationship with an American pilot who was based at Bern. And his name was Christiansen. And he was one of the top pilots at Bern, and he got the DFC for the raids on Nuremberg. Now, having said that, they fell deeply in love, and I was the result. So when I was born, He used to sit me on his knee, apparently, on the aerodrome. I mean, I was only a small baby,
Of
you
course,
know.
of course.
So they decided to get married, and they were going to get married at Selby Abbey. And banns were read and everything. And 3 weeks before the actual service, the military police arrived to inform my mother, who was the baker, that, and she was called Baker, funny enough, to inform her that her husband had been found hiding in Italy, quite well, but hiding, and was under arrest, but was going to be repatriated back to England.
So he wasn't dead. Ouch.
He wasn't dead.
Ouch.
Now, the problem was he was a bully and he was an alcoholic. And there was no question that when he got back, there was going to be a lot of violence. So I was taken and hidden on my auntie's pig farm at Neyburn Locks. And when he arrived back, being a village, rumour spread, he heard and discovered there was a baby. He beat my mother and then came to Neyburn to kill me. I was hidden with the pigs in the little piglets out in the barn. Incredible. I was in the pigsty and he couldn't find me and he went back. I was immediately then taken by my aunt to York and handed over to the nuns at an orphanage who looked after me and put me up for adoption. And then I was adopted by the Everett family. Took me
Good for them.
Took me up to Yorkshire, to Cleveland. And my stepmother, Sybil, she was a policewoman, although she was only 5 feet tall. And my father was a fireman who had just come back from Operation Pluto, taking the oil and fuel across Europe with General Patton along to Berlin.
Okay.
So he was on that side, and he had just left the fire service, and now he was an auctioneer. So that was the Everett family.
Excellent.
Excuse me. Now, my mother's family were incredible. Her brother, my uncle by adoption, my Uncle Wolf, he was a captain in the Royal Signals, but he ended up as Deputy General, Director General of GCHQ, and he was at Bletchley Park.
So you've got good genes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
technically.
Adopted.
Yeah, no, I realise
Yes,
that. Adopted genes.
But my mother's father, he was an RSM, Royal Signals at Catterick, and he went out with Lawrence of Arabia during the First World War, served with him. And then her grandfather, my great-grandfather, who was very much alive when I was there, he was a multi-millionaire. He owned 12 ships.
Yep.
And
you inherited that, didn't you? We're going to come to that.
Well, we're going to come to that. Yeah, we're going to come to that. Oh, yes.
He did.
Yeah. And he had a large estate in Yorkshire. He had 28 retainers inside the house.
Yeah.
Not counting gardeners and 3 farms. Absolute fortune. And of course, we're all sitting there waiting for the big day. Anyway, he decided he was going to pay for me to go to Harrow. And sod's law, in 1954, he died. But he didn't die like a normal person. 3 years previously, he kicked his wife out and divorced her and moved in a 23-year-old girl.
Yeah, you have to respect him. That's not a joke. That's a bad joke.
A bimbo, who had no interest in the money,
No,
of course.
No, of course not.
Anyway, when he died, come to the reading of the will, not a penny. Not a penny. The whole estate, the shipping line, everything
Went to her.
But
So he just never updated the will, presumably.
No.
Didn't expect to die.
But I did get a photograph of him, which I use as a dartboard. I've got it at home in a gold frame, and a Masonic chain he left. It's ironic because later in life I became a Mason, so it was nice to have. But apart from that, not a sou, not a penny. So it was a bit of a disaster. But what did happen was we used to go to Saltburn, to the beach, and we go there in the summer and have picnics. And this is where the story starts. Because one afternoon, I'd be about 9 or 10, there was a massive storm brewing, and I happened to notice there were some cliffs going out from the beach. Of called Hunt Cliff, and a lot of rockery. And I noticed a group of people there taking interest in rocks. So I went out there expecting to find a dinosaur or something.
Sure.
And they were putting a body out. And they pulled the arm, and the arm came away from the body.
Wow.
And that's what I thought, wow, this was a new experience. But one that I found very exciting because I was a weird kid.
How old would you have been?
Probably about 9 or 10.
Oh, how old enough? Okay.
So anyway, I went back to the mother sitting on the beach, for the picnic, and the storm's coming. She said, "We've got to go. There's a storm coming." I said, "I can't go yet. There's a dead body." Anyway,
they need to watch.
They took this body off on a canvas, very dramatically on a canvas stretcher out of this little building. And above it had the word mortuary. So I said to my brother, "What's a mortuary?" She said, "Oh, it's the house of the dead." "Is it?" So I went back up to have a look. She said, "Come on, we've got to go." So I was most annoyed. So we left there. And from then on, I got an interest in death. And the next door neighbour.
I mean, that's not normal, though, is it?
Oh, it's not normal at all. No.
Have another glass of sherry. Have another glass of sherry.
As you will see, the following week, the next door neighbour kindly died. And they took him off in a van, you see, and I was at the window watching all this. A really morbid little devil. And by now, my step-parents realised they hadn't got a normal son.
They got a serial killer on the loose.
No, this was the thing. Everybody said I was going to be a serial killer or a pathologist. And I got a real fascination in death. It was weird. And all my fellow mates used to go out and play football on the weekends. I used to go to the cemeteries, walk around the cemeteries. And then I discovered hospitals have mortuaries. Walk around the hospital looking in the mortuaries. Absolutely weird. So weird, they took me to a psychiatrist, which was the biggest mistake of their lives. Because this psychiatrist, Dr. Redding, she was a lovely old lady, and she thought she would give me some therapy by telling me exactly what happened in the post-mortem. By George, was I was hooked.
Yeah. When's my next session?
It didn't work.
When's my next session?
So my parents said, that is it. That's the final straw. The next step is discipline. We're going to send him to boarding school. Oh, my God. So I ended up in a minor public school up in Yorkshire. And it was terrible. I mean, you got beaten every day by the prefects and by the staff. They all had the right to cane, and they did. And suddenly I was in a world where I was learning Latin and ancient history, which I had no interest in whatsoever. And in the dormitory at night, I used to tell all the boys stories about mass murderers. And the headmaster sent for me and said, "This is not on, you're upsetting the boys."
Sure.
Well, the boys loved it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I eventually left the damn place, and it was horror. And my parents said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to the theatre." So I went off to the Oxford Academy of Speech and Drama, and there I learned the art of acting. I was damn useless. And then I did the rep circuit, doing the reps, and I ended up at the Old Vic, worked with Laurence Olivier, a small role, very small roles, walking with a spear sort of thing. I did that for a while. And then I went off to Ireland, which we'll talk about in the next video.
Yeah. Can I tell you, I want to do a spoiler. I so want to do a spoiler. The next video, shall I say? Well,
we're going to do it at the end, aren't we?
Yeah,
give me a brief intro if you want.
Went to work for MI5. Well, we won't talk about that. Next video. If you think this is interesting, wait till we get to the interesting part. Next video.
MI6.
Sorry, MI6.
Anyway, so I went to Ireland to work as a jobbing actor, and I did that for I did that for a short time, 6 months. Then came back to England, and I continued acting until the mid-1970s. But by then, theatre was drying up, and I had to look for a new profession. So I used to drink in the French House in London.
So there's lots of creative people there.
Oh, yes.
Loads of creatives.
And I used to drink there. I mean, Burton used to go in there. Richard Burton used to go in there. But Edgar Scarton was the character.
What was your tipple, just out of interest?
G&T, funny enough.
Okay.
Yeah. And on the beer side, a bitter.
Quite bitter.
Anyway, Edgar Scarton used to drink in there. And Edgar had a television series then called Scotland Yard. and he used to relive old cases and tell the viewers about it. So he and I got on pretty damn well together, but he didn't know he had a nutter here who was obsessed with death. But he was a very interesting character.
What did your wife say? What did your wife think? You know, I've got married to this lovely man, and you're a charming, wonderful man. You really are. You're wonderful. What did she think?
Well,
I know what your parents thought.
Yeah,
They got you psychiatric help.
Yeah, I think my wife felt sorry for me, actually. But funny enough, she was a midwife. So if the phone went at midnight, we didn't know they were coming or going, you know, so that was the thing. But being a medic herself, she was quite acceptable by the thing. I don't think she
She's
thought...
very easygoing, isn't she?
Yeah, very easygoing. I don't think she thought I was a nutter, but like my parents. Because my parents were right, but, you know, she put up with a lot, my wife.
Yeah, I know, we're talking about that.
The funny thing is, you know, jumping way ahead, when I went back to the theatre after the service, you know, she was annoyed because she married, you know, a medic scientist and ended up with an actor again, which she did not want.
No.
So anyway, so that was that. But Edgar Garden was a great inspiration to me, and I was so impressed by him that I decided I wanted to work into a mortuary, which absolutely horrified him. So I then walked around London to all the mortuaries looking for a vacancy. And I walked for 3 days, all these various mortuaries. Nobody had any vacancies. And I got to a mortuary in Battersea Public Mortuary. And the superintendent there said, try the hospitals, they always want staff. Well, why do they always want staff? He said, you'll find out. I then ended up at University College Hospital. And asked where the mortuary was. It was a very weird question, really. And it was through this garage. I had to walk through this garage full of vegetables and cabbages and things up this rickety staircase. And I found myself in the post-mortem room. There was all these sort of 3 slabs in there, porcelain slabs. And I'm actually in a mortuary. And I stood there, no bodies, just the mortuary room.
And presumably the slabs were 100 years old?
Oh, probably more. Oh. Probably more. And then this voice said, may I help you? And I turned around. This is very dignified-looking gentleman with the pince-nez, you know, and he was the professor of pathology. I said, good afternoon, sir. I said, I'm looking for a vacancy. He said, we may be able to help you. He's very eccentric, but a marvellous guy. He said, go across to the pub on the corner of the Reddington, and in there you'll find 2 drunks, and they are my staff. So, so I wandered over to the pub, and there were the only 2 in there at the bar. And I said, excuse me. I introduced myself. Oh, they welcomed me, bought me a drink, then took me over the
And these were eminent people in the trade.
Oh, yes.
These were eminent people in the trade.
Very eminent. I know. Because what I didn't know... One of them was the National Secretary of the Guild of Mortuary Administration and Technology, and the other one was the chairman.
Hilarious.
So they were the 2 highest ones in the country, really. And they befriended me. They took me over and showed me the mortuary and said, right, we can't pay you, but you're welcome to come in and we'll train you free of charge, which I did. So...
that's just stopping there. Just a thought at a time where presumably in that era there was plentiful work generally in all sorts of trades.
Yes.
And you were taking unpaid work. I mean, that just shows, I don't want to say obsession, but it just shows your commitment to...
But it wasn't...
And the fact that you went and banged on loads of doors. Lots of people wouldn't have done that.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of people wouldn't have done that.
Yes, but obsession indeed, but it was an academic.
Just wanted to understand.
I wanted to see inside the body. I wanted to know how the body worked.
Wanted to understand.
So, you know, there was an academic side to it. And that is why I went to the trouble of knocking on all these doors. So they said, come back tomorrow and we'll start. So the next day I went in, seeking academe, and I was shocked because they brought back the sheet off his body. And instead of looking at an old, elderly person, I was looking at the body of a 16-year-old Japanese girl who in life had been very attractive. And it was a shock. I didn't expect this.
Mm.
And that was my first ever dead body.
Mm.
And I watched them do the dissection. And then a week later, I was doing the dissection myself.
And a lot of police, I know we'll cover this later on, but a lot of the police, when that happens, are sick.
Oh, yes.
And just, I don't want to say traumatized, yeah, perhaps traumatized, not unreasonably, but you just accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, please recognize within that minority, the people who were sick all the time were the nurses.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I used to lecture the nurses at Guy's Hospital and at Mary's. I'd always invite them to come and see a PM. And then they were inevitably sick. And also inevitably ask stupid questions.
Yeah,
I had one nurse who actually said to me, when they've finished, the mortician stitched the body up, how long do the stitches take to heal? Which I couldn't believe a question from a qualified nurse. So anyway, I stayed at University College for about 3 months, and they actually trained me up how to do a dissection, how to remove organs and what signs to look for and so forth. But I still a pretty amateur, I wasn't professional.
No.
And
the signs of death are in the organs normally?
Oh, there's lots of signs. It depends what you're looking for. I mean, you're looking at the hands, you're looking for clubbing in the nails. There's all sorts of post-mortem signs you look for on the body before you start the post-mortem. Obviously, you want to make damn certain there's nothing strange going on.
Yeah.
Suspicious. Then you move elastoplasty in case there's been an injection on site or something. You do all of this. You examine the body. But I'll go into that in more detail.
Yeah, no, I've got lots of questions
detail
on
later.
Lots of questions on it.
But I was there for about 3 months, and with their references and with Professor Smith's references, I got the post to run the mortuary at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington. Little did I know, I was the only one. So I arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, an old mortuary in an old hospital.
And no one regulated the mortuaries, did they?
Oh,
there was no one. There was no real oversight.
Oh, no. This was the problem. No.
There's no oversight.
There isn't today either. So but I'll come on to that later.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But at Mary's, I was delighted to be there because my great uncle on the adopted side was Sir Bernard Spilsbury. Because my mother was a Hetherington and Spilsbury was a Hetherington. So, and he used to come and stay with the family, apparently. I never met him. It was before my time. But it was nice to work in the department, be in a much lower level that he worked in.
Yeah, lovely.
And I was using the old instruments that he used to use, and this was my facility. But I arrived there on the first day, and I couldn't get into the post-mortem room. Just banging on the door. And eventually the door opened. This sheepish-looking chap looked around the door at me. He was Italian, long hair. And what do you want? I said, I'm going to start to take over the mortuary. Oh, big boss man, he said. Just a minute. I opened the door, and these 2 beautiful girls came out the mortuary, down the stairs. Who the devil are they? And they'd spend the night with him in the mortuary on the slab. He lived there. He lived in the post-mortem room. How he got these girls to go into the mortuary, I've got no idea. No. But he was eccentric. But this was Rossi, lovely guy, and he kept calling me Big Boss Man. But Big Boss Man now had a job to do. I had to run a mortuary. And within the first month, I got
Was he paying rent?
I ended up getting him a hospital flat in Paddington. Yeah. Because I couldn't have him. No. There's bloody mattresses. You open a drawer full of scalpels, and the next drawer had shirts in it. Ridiculous.
It's funny.
So we had to sort that
I
one
think it's
out.
funny.
Yeah. Anyway, in the first month, I had a call down to casualty, dead body in a taxi. It was Edgar Luscarton.
The crime writer.
Yeah.
That had inspired you to do this.
And the irony was, I was not allowed to identify him.
Because, you're not family.
Because of my position. And it took 8 hours to get somebody to do it. His agent came to identify him.
So that's very sad for me, but it was something that I had to get used to, because later on in life, I had one of my old girlfriend's mothers came in. But I didn't mind that because she was a so-and-so. So we did the post-mortem on her. And so a lot of things happened at Mary's. And I got involved in parachuting because they started a parachute team for emergencies. So in a major disaster, we could parachute people in.
To sort it out.
Yeah. So I became a deputy commander of this team. So I had to start jumping out of flaming planes at the weekends. So, but it was
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, but the SAS trained us. We went to the Army Training Centre and did the jumps there. And then we got taught survival. So it was very, very interesting. But that's getting away from the mortuary, because the actual mortuary itself, we had a lot of interesting cases. We had an IRA chap who was sent over here to plant a bomb. And he went out to a restaurant to have a meal, and he choked on a piece of steak, which is very fortunate.
Yeah.
For the
Because he got the
people.
code word.
Yeah. But very fortunate. So
He was about to set off a bomb, I believe.
yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. So he
Lives were saved.
died before he could set it.
Yeah.
We had another case of one night. One night I saw all these blue lights.
Can I just ask, what if Edmund how do you pronounce his name? The crime writer. What did he die of?
What, Edgar?
Yeah, Edgar.
Heart attack.
It was a heart attack.
Yeah. However,
I can ask how you know. Obviously, you carry out the post-mortem. What are the signs of a heart attack?
well, when you dissect the heart itself, you will see a grey area on the muscle.
Okay.
And that is where the heart attack is.
Well, yeah, you can see it.
Oh, you can see it, yes, quite clearly.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No, it's okay.
Blue lights.
Trying to get my thought. Yes,
Blue
blue
lights.
Blue lights. This night I'm looking out of my penthouse in Paddington, and I see these blue lights around the hospital. So I shot over there, and Casualty Sister, a lot of press around. Casualty Sister said, "Thank God you're here. Don't mention the war." That's odd. So I'm into the crash room, there's a body there. And these various people around it taking great interest. I said, "Who the dickens is he?" "Albert Speer."
The famous Nazi.
I said, "Albert Speer, I've heard the name. He
Famous
was number
Nazi.
2 to Hitler.
Yeah.
He was his architect.
Mhm.
And here he was lying on my table. So
Am I right saying his defence at Nuremberg was that all of this stuff that was going on, he didn't know about?
Oh, absolutely.
That was his defence.
Yes. I mean, he should have been hanged.
Yeah.
He got away with it.
He got away with it. Yeah,
He got
absolutely.
20 years, instead of getting hanged.
Yeah, of course.
So here he was anyway. He didn't get away from me. And then I got a call from the admin to say that his daughter had arrived. Would I take her to the chapel to see him? Well, I took her down there, and she walked in, looked at him, clicked her heels, did a bow, ran out of the chapel and off into the underground of the hospital. Where she got to, I don't know. Lost her. So I thought, well, that's his typical Nazi sort of characterization, clicking the heels and the bow. And then I had a press, I remember the press came up to me and offered me £10,000.
And when was this?
Sorry?
When would this have been, roughly?
1980, late 1970s.
So 10 grand,
Yeah.
then in today's money would be just humongous.
Oh, yeah, it was even better than that. I'll tell you in a moment. But offered me this 10 grand if I get a photograph of Speer, which I would not do
No, of course,
ethically
of
in a
course not.
million years.
Of course.
So I told him where to go and handed him over to the police. And anyway, dealt with that.
Good old News of the World.
But I'm going to jump forward. I'm going to jump forward now some 20, 30 years, because I was working with Fleet Street, and Don Mackay, who was the chief reporter for the Daily Mirror, said, had I given him a photograph of Speer, he would have got me £1 million.
Ouch. Ouch.
And then the strange thing was, and the same thing happened with the famous pathologist, Professor Keith Simpson. Every Christmas, I got a Christmas card at the hospital with £5 in. I imagine it's from a Jewish person, I guess. There was no name. And it just said Speer on the card.
And they thanked you.
Yeah. But I didn't actually do the PM. It went off to Westminster. And
all the pathologists be fighting over that one, wouldn't they?
God,
They want a celebrity or infamous.
But Professor Simpson got it. He usually got the big ones. And then I got invited to, because of my theatrical background, to direct or to do the technical direction for the Students' Operatic Society. So I was the technical director and built the sets and everything. And lo and behold, the Queen Mother came, and I got introduced to her. And Sir George Pinker, who delivered my son, he was the royal obstetrician, and he introduced me to the Queen, Queen Mother, and she said to me, "What do you do?" And I saw George Pinker, his face, God's sake, don't say anything, please. I said, "I work in a laboratory, ma'am." So we got away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very tactful.
So I decided I would then go to the next stage of qualifications and go into forensic medicine. So to do that, I had to go to a public mortuary because they are the ones who deal with the murders. And there was two on offer at the time. There was Westminster Mortuary in the centre of London, and there was Southwark Mortuary that covered the South London or South East London. So being Peter, I opted for the wrong one. And I got offered both of them, but I took.
There's a huge divide between North London and South London. Just saying.
Oh yes, it's called the River Thames.
Apart from the obvious, apart from the water.
But having said that, so I moved down south and I went into Southwark Mortuary as their new superintendent, and that is when hell started.
I know.
I was steering a ship.
Can I interrupt you there before we talk about all your experience, which is really what we're here to talk about? So can you just explain what the mortuary does, who goes there? So does everybody that dies, passes away, do they all go to a mortuary? Can you just explain how the death industry works? Somebody dies in hospital, of an illness, whether actually in there, would they go to a mortuary? Just a brief summary of how it works.
There's all the rules have recently changed. Anybody who goes into hospital and dies within 24 hours of an anaesthetic automatically becomes a coroner's case.
Okay.
So they go to have a post-mortem with the coroner. Anyone who dies within 14 days of not seeing a doctor becomes a coroner's case. Accidents like road traffic accidents, they become coroner's cases. There's quite a lot of rules for coroner's cases, which would take me an hour to go into because there's a lot of them. But I will say this, the majority of cases of death do not have post-mortems.
Right, okay.
Yeah. You've got to fall into the category for the coroner's case in order to have a post-mortem.
Into that system.
Now, the hospital post-mortem is a different thing altogether. When people die in hospital, the consultant surgeons or doctors will want a post-mortem. They want to know why the patient died.
Yeah.
And it's all academic because it helps them for future investigations into causes of death and diagnoses. But in the old days, in my time, they did dirty tricks. They would send the junior doctors, the housemen, to the relatives and say, "May we have a post-mortem?" And the relatives would say, "No, we don't want a post-mortem." They would then say, "Well, we can't issue a death certificate because we're not certain about the cause, and therefore refer it to the coroner." So
and what was the motivation for that?
The motivation was that the consultant wanted a post-mortem, and he was getting one.
Yeah.
That was the thing. And that's how it worked in the old days.
Okay. And they get paid extra for that?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's academe.
Right.
You know, its hobbies go forth and seek truth in academe.
Fair enough.
The growth of
Yeah.
academe, you know? And it was all about future diagnoses. When you go into a mortuary, I mean, at University College Hospital, we had a big sign on the wall. From the dead, we learn about the living. It's very true.
Yeah, it's very true.
You know? And when you think what over the past 200 or 300 years, how medicine has advanced because of postmortems. And as one pathologist said to me, at the end of the day, it's quality control.
Yeah.
So it's imperative. It's very, very important. And also it's important to make sure that the husband hasn't knocked the wife off. You know, so
yeah, no, of course.
You know, on the suspicious side.
Of course.
But I said the majority of deaths don't have postmortems.
No. So you're at Southwark now.
I'm now at Southwark.
Southwark.
I'm trying. No. I'm trying to get into Southwark, but they won't open the bloody door.
That's right.
So I'm banging on the door, and eventually this carriage came to the door, opened the door. He's got an apron on covered in blood and gloves covered in blood. So I didn't shake hands, and I identified myself, and he said, "Go away." I said, "Sorry." He said, "What do you want?" I said, "I'm the superintendent." "No, you're not," he said. "I'm the superintendent."
Ouch.
What is going on here? So I get into the mortuary. He will not give me the codes for the door. As far as he's concerned, he is the superintendent, which he was. He got demoted some couple of months previously for a lot of mistakes he had made, which is why the vacancy came up.
Yeah.
So he was now my deputy.
And were they mistakes or were they...
Well, there was a lot involved in this. When I got commissioned for the post, after I got commissioned, of course, they gave me a big file.
Then they told you.
And this file was all about the deputy. And the history was astonishing. The mortuary had been broken into one night. And this was the only night in the history of the mortuary that a gold Rolex watch had not been put in the safe. And it vanished. And then there were other bits of jewellery missing. The wrong body was cremated. That happened twice. Relatives going to the funeral, stopped their relative. So it was an astonishing situation.
And he was still there.
He was still there.
He's still there.
Oh, I mean, the file was that thick.
He was Teflon. He just couldn't be touched.
He couldn't be touched until I came along. And I'm not putting up with this.
And do you suspect that there were issues with the management above? Or were they just totally incompetent?
Look, going from the beginning, I didn't know.
No.
I didn't know. On the first day I was there, my deputy, who was the superintendent, and his assistant came to see me. And they said, "Keep your mouth shut, your eyes closed, and we'll double your salary." On the first day, could not believe it. And they named names, and they said how high up the corruption went.
And these people don't know you from Adam, other than an initial introduction.
This is the first
day.
This is the first day. The assistant, of course, they say, "Shut up, shut up."
And just to be really clear, what they're saying to you, look the other way, as you say, shut up, and because of these corrupt practices, you would get some dosh.
Yeah, a lot of dosh. So I said, I don't want
It
to.
took some gall to say it's a complete stranger.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is how thick they
Yeah,
were.
stupid.
Well, the deputy was thick. The assistant was terrified. So I said, I don't want to hear any more of this at all. It stops now. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to know. It stops.
I wouldn't mind a job like that.
And I thought, right, I'm going to get you swines. So from then on, I started recording things in the mortuary, conversations, covertly. And I phoned up my senior director, the service and told him about the conversation. And alarmingly, he said, "Don't do anything, we've got no proof." Which could have been an innocent remark that I didn't know.
Yeah, it could have been taken out of context.
How high up did it go?
No.
So, my goodness me. So then I went,
You must have thought, what the hell am I doing here?
Well, you know, I put my certificates on the wall.
Yeah.
I hung them on the wall.
Yeah, proudly.
And I thought, oh, do I hang myself? You know, still on the wall. But it was a very serious situation. So then I went round to, even worse, to the coroner's office, where all the coroner's officers were police officers. And it was like walking into a rattlesnake's nest, you know. They all glared at me with daggers. What do you want? Who are you? And they supported the old superintendent.
Yeah,
you
of
know.
course, yeah.
And,
So they were corrupt.
Well, 3 of them were. And that was why I got such a reception. Anyway, over the following weeks, I covertly recorded them with equipment in the mortuary hidden. And I had a new assistant came, Sally Smith, lovely girl.
Yeah.
And she was only a school kid. She was 17. She came to the mortuary to learn. And on the first day, she was approached by the deputy.
Yeah.
Come on board, and you will look after you financially.
In your book, that's George, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Not the real name, of course.
No, of course. I know the real name.
So, yeah. So, at the end of the day, they approached her, and she came to see me. And I said, right.
She must have been terrible, just leaving school, her first job.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, keep your mouth shut and we can give you a load of money. We do all this corrupt stuff. I mean, she must have thought, what the hell's going on?
Well, fortunately, she came to see me.
Yeah, good.
And I said, I want it in writing, which she did. And I said, right, now we're going to the police. And if the director of service doesn't want to go to the police, I'll go myself.
Yeah.
So I went down to the head office, went into his office, put it on his desk, as I want action now, or I'm going to go public. So the next day, I was sent for to go to Camberwell Green to meet the area commander. And he said, I'm glad you're here. He said, I had a murder a few months ago, before I was there. And he said, it had a £5 note in the pocket. When I go to the mortuary, the £5 note
It's gone. It's gone.
Like,
Been stolen.
go steal off a murder case, you know. So he said, I'm glad this is coming out.
Yeah.
So Ian Johnson took over the case, and he was the DCI, the Detective Chief Inspector. And later on, he became Chief Constable of the Transport Police. Yeah. A lovely guy. And said, right, go back to the morgue, just carry on as normal. He said, you'll be contacted. And I got a phone call saying, go sick and come to Scotland Yard. And there I met the rubber heels, who were the police who catch the dirty police.
Yeah, the Ghost Squad.
The Ghost Squad. And Detective Chief Superintendent Ball, John Ball, was in charge. Took me upstairs, went into the main office, and on the wall was a big board with all these dozens of names of coroner's officers who were under investigation.
So this isn't just a local problem in Southwark. This is
across the whole capital.
Okay.
Across the capital. So
just shows the culture, because there was no oversight. Because there was no oversight.
It does indeed. But they treated me as an equal. They were very, very. They were the greatest police squad in the country, as far as I was concerned. They were brilliant. Very professional.
They've been done for corruption.
Yeah, but not this lot.
No.
But they were very, very professional. And we decided we were going to do a sting. So what we did, we looked at an actual trap.
So I just wanted to recap on one thing, because I'm going to mention it. So I mentioned in my introduction, this is Peter's book, and I'll use this as the cover for the actual video. So this book, so Corrupt Bodies by Peter Everett, Death and Dirty Dealing in a London Morgue. But I just remember in the book, if we just take a step back to when you were at the hospital, Cold War times, you had some unusual things happen with bodies appearing with with pink tablets.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us what happened?
These were the diplomats, the Corps Diplomatique. What happened was there was a big conference in London.
Basically, when we say diplomats, we mean spies, don't we?
Possibly, we don't know. There was a big conference in London where all the world's diplomats came for this conference. And the first thing happened at 8 o'clock in the morning. I got called to casualty. There's a dead Nigerian diplomat. And on his chest was this pink tablet. Now, when somebody has a heart attack, it's natural to give them an aspirin, but this was not aspirin. This was a strange-looking pink tablet. I'd never seen the likes of it before.
So you spat it out or choked it out or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know what had happened, but it was on his chest. So anyway, I went up to do the paperwork and came downstairs. No body. I said, "Sister, where's my body?" She said, "It's gone." What do you mean it's gone? It didn't walk out, did it? You know, so, she said, no, she said, "It's gone." And it was taken away in this little blue van, apparently. What's going on here? So I got on to the coroner's office. I said, "You're not going to believe this, but we've lost a body." Oh, he said, "Don't worry about it. It's all in hand. It's here. We know what's going on. Don't worry." Anyway, a couple of hours later, I got a phone call. "Sister casualty, we've got a body for you, a diplomat." I said, No. I said, "I've done this." No. She said, "This is another one." I said, "What?" So I went down to casualty. And again, diplomat on the table, dead, pink tablet.
On his chest.
This time, I think it was by his hand this time, pink tablet. You know? Well, that's going on. So this time, I thought, I'm having the body, I'm kidnapping it, not having it. So I took the body up to the post-mortem room. And then I got a call from the porter's lodge to say there's some people come for the body. So they came upstairs and I asked for identity. They said, "You don't need that," they said. And they took the body out, a blue van, and it vanished. I thought,
they didn't identify themselves at all?
No!
They must have done.
No, they didn't. They didn't. And I had to let it go because these three guys were official. There's no question about the big official. And how did they know the body was there, you know? And the blue van was there. Yeah. And off it went. Anyway.
And what was the time span between these two?
A couple of hours.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh, same day.
Oh, yeah, a couple of hours. Anyway, later that day, early evening, I got a phone call. We've got a dead diplomat in casualty. And by now, I'm ready to climb into the fridge myself. You know, what's going on here?
Commit Harry Carey.
So anyway, of course, all this time, we've got the police coming. We get a police inspector come to have a look at the body and everything. And I went down to casualty, and the police inspector's there. This is strange. It's the third one today. He said, it's just a normal death. Nothing to worry about, you know. The pathologists will find
this is so normal.
You know,
so normal.
Don't worry about it, you know. So I thought, I'm going to have to get a bigger fridge the way it's going. So anyway, that
find out who's selling these pink tablets.
That went off in a blue van as well. And I heard no more. And then a few weeks later, no connection whatsoever. A few weeks later, I got called down to casualty. The chap on the table in the crash room. And the sister said, "We've got a mystery." So what sort of mystery? So, well, there's his briefcase. He's got 3 passports. 3 passports? Yes. And a business card. His business card. So I wrote down the number on the business card. And the body was taken off to Westminster for Professor Simpson to deal with. So I phoned this number. And it said, "You have called a number under the Official Secrets Act." And that was it. So who he was, I've got no idea. No. But that was the Cold War. Yeah. And I had a body came in, which was Lord Bradwell. Lord Bradwell, also known as Tom Dryberg, was an MI6 spy, and he worked for the KGB. And he came in, he died, came up to me in the
No pink tablets.
No pink tablets, no. But
When they came up to get him, he had a wallet full of all these various cards and
Currency.
ID cards and things. He was a strange man. So that, yes, those were the Cold War days.
Interesting. Even to this day, even now, MI5 have got an 0207 number, so a London telephone number. So any spy in the field anywhere on the planet can ring that number and get help. And it's a very, very polite receptionist on the other end. You would never know you were calling the MOD.
It doesn't work like that.
I've got the number.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. They might do on that one, but there is a number that you phone when you do not speak at all.
Okay.
And they will then call you back, and then you have the conversation.
Okay.
That's the one I had.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but yours might work, but yeah. But they're not in the yellow pages.
No. Interesting times.
Yeah.
Interesting times.
So, yeah, there's one of the Cold War years. But going back to Southwark, in Southwark, I decided I was going to work with the police and we're going to get these people.
Fantastic.
And in the evenings, I used to go into the coroner's office.
I just out of interest, were the top brass at the council on your side at this point? Because obviously you're now dealing with Scotland Yard.
They didn't know.
They didn't know. Of course you told me.
They knew I was working with the yard, but they didn't know what it was.
No.
I was under orders not to say anything to anybody.
You had a day sick and went and saw them, sorry.
So I used to go off sick to go to the yard.
Yep.
And in the evenings, I used to go into the office and I used to empty the baskets and read all the stuff in the waste paper baskets. I used to check what was on the typewriters.
Did you find interesting things?
Good. No, not really. No, but I was looking. But, there's nothing obvious to
me. Just in case, yeah.
And so we did that. And then I got a call to say go to the yard the next day for a debrief on what was happening in the mortuary, any war news and that. While I was at the yard, we got a phone call from Sally Smith, the girl who was in the mortuary.
Yep.
Informing us she'd been thrown out the mortuary and the doors had been locked. So John Ball, the superintendent, without hesitation, kept the cars. As we went off in 3 cars, dashed out the yard into these 3 cars very dramatically, across the London Bridge, up to the mortuary. And John Ball said, right, Peter, go in and see what's going on. He said, if there's anything extraordinary in there, he said, just scratch your nose. When I
time-honoured sign.
Yeah, when I come in, scratch your nose. He said, I'll nick them.
Yeah. So
I'm into the mortuary. But as it happens, they're all acting very innocent. Nothing going on at all. And John came in, didn't scratch my nose. So he came up to me and whispered and said, go home, I'll give you a call in a few minutes. And they nicked them and took them off to the yard. So then they came to get me. And we're out of sync here because something happened before this. We're out of sync.
Okay, sorry. Carol. Can you remind us of that?
Yeah, we decided to do a sting. And we decided the sting was going to be at St. Catherine's Dock. Off the River Thames. And we went down there to the Dickens Inn and planned it. And there were 4 tables. And you
were on your best behaviour?
Yep, we reserved these 4 tables. Everybody's in Series goes all CID, nobody.
And they didn't stand out at all, these guys, did they?
Well, I'll come to that. So we got these 4 tables.
I was joking when I said that.
We've got these 4 tables, and this is where the sting's going to happen. Now, the sting is, I'm going to go to the deputy, my deputy, the crook.
Yeah.
And I'm
the former superintendent.
And I'm going to be very friendly, and I'm going to sound like I'm coming on side. Come and have a drink this evening. We'll go down to St. Catherine's Dock. Oh, he said, I don't really want to go out tonight. I said, it's going to be amazing. I said, they've got all these American baseball, what do you call them? I've forgotten the name.
Sporting people.
Yes,
sporting.
All these girls are coming over. Yeah. What's the name? Baseball.
Oh, I wouldn't know. I don't sport and me. We'll never clue.
Anyway, they're all coming over. All the dancers, all the dancing girls, and they're going to be St. Catherine's Dock. So that said, okay, very sexist. Yeah, that's fine. I'll come. You know. So we went down there. Now, as we were going to go down, I had to go to Guy's Hospital first, where the police were waiting, and they put a wire on me.
Yeah.
And I had this device the size of a brick at the base of my spine, and leads going down here to a microphone, and another device in here, which I didn't know at the time, but it was a tracker to where I was. So I went off and met the deputy.
That's to make sure you didn't nick the kit.
Yeah, so
It's expensive.
went off to get the deputy, and as we were walking down to St. Catherine's Dock, the police van passes me, full of aerials. And he said, "My goodness me, that's an odd-looking vehicle." I said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And darn me, immediately after that, a car goes past with the superintendent. And he says, "I know that man, he's a copper." I said, "Is he?" Oh. So I thought, this is going really bent now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get down to St. Catherine's Dock.
Were you perspiring a little bit?
Well, no, I couldn't afford to. But when I got to the dock, the 4 tables were full of all CIB2 officers, you see, all sitting there quite naturally. I've never seen a bunch of police officers in my life that look like police officers. I tell you, they were drinking, they had the jeans on.
Well, they're like the background actors in EastEnders.
Oh, goodness. These people couldn't act, I tell you. They were brilliant detectives, but my George, but they stood out a mile. And even the deputy said, "They look like coppers." I said, "Oh, I don't think so, no, don't be silly." Anyway, we got drinking, and I managed to get him talking about all the fiddles and names of people who were bent. And then he said, "You were recording me, aren't you?" "Oh, dear." I said, "How dare you? How dare you say such a thing?" I said, "I came here for a drink, and you treat me like this." I said, "You're not worth it." And I stood up, and I did that. I said, "Search me. Go on, search me." He said, "Oh, sorry, Governor." He said, "Sorry." And it worked.
God.
Anyway,
That was close.
It was close.
That was close.
But the problem was, he very sensibly had had a meal before he came out. I hadn't.
Right, okay.
And I had 3 pints of beer. And I was now starting to get pretty tipsy.
Yeah.
And I went off to the Tower Hotel next door to use the loo. And while I'm in there, the chief superintendent came in. He said, "Get out now. Go home, go home." So I went out onto Tower Bridge, and I'm walking across Tower Bridge.
You didn't go back to you didn't back to see him? Or?
No. I'm walking across Tower Bridge, and there's a rail. And this car screeches to a halt. 4 guys get out, lift me over the rail, push me in the car, talk about a kidnap, and drive non-stop to the yard, down into the basement, get me out.
And you're a bit like this.
Oh,
you're a bit like
it
this.
took 3 hours to debrief me. I had sausage rolls, and black coffee,
Yeah.
and eventually they debriefed me. Took me home. It's now 4 or 5 in the morning, and John Ball said, "I'll be back in 3 hours to collect you." So we had a working breakfast at the yard, and went through all the tapes, and it was so embarrassing. It really was embarrassing. I hope these aren't played in court. Anyway, it was then, back in Sync, where we got the call from Sally Smith, and went across the bridge and nicked them.
Good.
And they were arrested. So the problem is, the deputy can't get out of it. It's on tape.
Mm.
He's got no chance.
No.
But the assistant don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Gov. Gov.
So he's the one that's the problem, which means we're now going to go to Crown Court, and he's going to be the one standing trial, while the deputy is going to be sitting there already guilty. So we get into court on the first day, and I could not believe it. I went home after the court case. I'm headline news, not them. I'm headline news. So it's on news at 10. I'm the lead story. It's in all the papers the following day, and suddenly I'm a cause célèbre, which is, something I did not want. And
Well, you were the star witness at the Old Bailey.
Yeah, well, I was certainly the witness.
Yeah.
That's me. And this went on for 3 or 4 days. and I was in the I was in the box for 2 days giving evidence. And then at the end of my evidence, the barrister, the QC representing the assistant, stopped me and he said, "Mr. Everett, do you think my client's guilty?" I said, "No, I don't." "Thank you." And he sat down, the swine, because I was going to go on to say, "I don't think he's guilty. I know he's guilty.
Of course.
But I never got the chance."
No.
Jury, not guilty. And he walked.
So these villains at Southwark were getting bodies coming in without relatives, and they were taking the money and they were taking the jewellery. They had bodies coming in that had relatives, but they would take the wallet, and if it had £50 in, they would take 10 or 20. But where they came unstuck really was, of course, relatives sometimes knew they'd just been to the bank.
Yeah.
What they couldn't hide was the jewellery. Watch is missing. Where's my husband's watch? And the council, they would hold an inquiry and nothing would come of it.
No.
And they continued in post, stealing off the bodies.
Because there was no evidence.
There was no evidence. But on top of that, they were also selling body organs.
Yeah.
So we
And
had...
you made the famous line at the trial at the Old Bailey, "The dead do not rest in peace, they rest in pieces."
That's right.
National headlines.
That was the headline.
National headlines.
But it was true.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I mean, the body in those days, the human body was worth £148 on selling organs. Eyes were going for £10 for a pair of eyes.
Presumably they had to be fairly fresh.
Yeah, within 24 hours. Yeah. Now, we had a guy in Harley Street I was after.
And who was buying them? Sorry,
I
Harley
was
Street, sorry.
going to tell you.
You are?
There was a consultant eye surgeon in Harley Street who I was well after, this man. And he was paying £10 to mortuaries for a pair of eyes. And then he was sending them to the Far East for operations. And he was charging £20,000 a time. So this guy was big on the circuit of corruption.
It's unbelievable.
I had a professor.
And this. I mean, just to reiterate, I know we know this is here in London. This isn't some far off place that's not, that's not guided by rules and the law. Here in London, it's just unbelievable.
I had a professor in London of surgery who was buying brains. They were going for £10 each. Spinal cords were going for £20. So it was a big business.
Yeah.
This human harvesting of organs was pretty big business in those days.
And this wasn't. And you found out later this wasn't just at Southwark. This was
no.
This was a national problem.
And the tragedy for me was University College Hospital, where I trained. The 2 top guys were arrested for corruption, and what they were doing, they were stealing the money for cremation forms. When someone gets cremated, you need 2 doctors' signatures. And in those days, the doctors were paid £35 each for the signature on the certificate.
Yeah.
And the funeral director would bring that money and hand it over to the mortuary staff. And what they were doing, they were forging the doctor's signature on the forms and keeping the money. And they got caught. And they were also allegedly selling eyes. So I knew none of this, of course.
No,
so it was a big, big shock. And I was a member of the guild because they'd brought me in.
Yeah.
Ironically, I was then appointed as national secretary to the guild, which opened the field, because now I had access to the whole country and all the mortuaries. And the things coming across my desk were astonishing, absolutely astonishing. I had a post-mortem technician in Nottingham, the City Mortuary, who ended up on the front page of the Sunday People with a jar of gratuities, which he was selling. Clothes he was wearing were from a dead man,
And he was quite open about it. It was absolutely astonishing. I had another case of a technician up in the north of England who was told by the pathologist to stab the body because he'd written a report about the stabbing and there was no stabbing. So to cover himself, he wanted the technician to stab him. Another pathologist wanted somebody to break a neck because the neck wasn't broken.
When he said it had been.
Yeah. So, it was quite astonishing what was going on. I had another technician in the East End of London.
And these people could behave like that, presumably, because there was no one to hold them to account.
There was no supervision. And East End of London, there was a technician who was actually taking kidneys home and bits of liver and eating it. Cannibalism. And when they searched his house, in the fridge, they found all sorts of human organs which he was eating. This
Hannibal Lecter.
Quite astonishing, it really was. I had a couple of cases of necrophilia where they'd been caught with the bodies having
Jimmy
sex.
Savile famously was allegedly a necrophiliac.
Yes, he was. Yes. So not a nice thing at all.
No.
It was pretty horrific. But all these cases were coming across my desk. So I had quite a list.
And you were powerless really to do anything about it?
I was totally powerless. Because I wasn't in their mortuaries,
No.
I only had control over my own mortuary. And then I say control, I had no supervision supporting me at all. I was by myself, a one-man band. But I wasn't going to let the swines get away with it.
No, good.
Yeah,
Good.
so that was the scene then with the human organs and thefts. It's astonishing.
Just beggars belief. It's just incredible.
But we had incredible cases of murder at Southwark. It was the number one murder mortuary in London, really. And we had some tragedies as
More
well.
murders south of the river than north of the river?
Yes.
I thought so.
At one stage, we had more murders than New York. But it was astonishing. We had a lot of bambino murders, which were the children.
Yeah.
And we had 28 suspicious deaths for children in 1 month, which was terrible. We had the case of the dumper murder.
Yeah.
Now, the dumper was local to the mortuary. It was only a 5-minute walk from the mortuary. And one morning, a lady was walking her dog, and she passed a dumper truck. And she saw mannequins in the dumper. So she went to have a look. There weren't mannequins, there were bodies. And it was a teenage boy and a teenage girl.
It's a heartbreaking story.
And it was snowing, thick snow. So we went out to the dumper. And when I got there, the detective chief superintendent said, "Be careful." Because there was a fire station next door. He said, "Look at the tower." And on the tower was the ITN News. They had the cameras up there. So we were in shot, everything we did. So I got a canvas sheet and we held it up over the dumper to stop any vision. And then we took the bodies back to the mortuary. And it was Professor Mant. It was his case. And,
a man that you loved.
Oh, he was fantastic.
I know. You speak so fondly of him.
He was fantastic. Yeah. And the thing about Mant was he used to work in America. He was one of the American medical examiners. And somebody who was very close to him was Patricia Cornwall.
Okay.
Patricia Cornwall.
The writer.
The crime writer.
Crime writer, yeah.
And she used to go to him and he used to give her all the information and advice for her novels. They were very close. But he did some marvelous cases in America. And he told me something very interesting about the assassination of JFK.
Right, okay.
As well. So he was a fascinating character. So we got the bodies back from the dumper and we examined them. And it was a very interesting case. They had been murdered a mile away from the dumper. It was thick snow. And when they sealed off the scene where they died, because it was a factory, and staff had gone in and found blood and everything, and then they knew that was the scene.
Yep.
When the local police constable, who was on duty at the scene, guarding it, went back to Southwark Police Station, he saw a bicycle. And this bicycle was unique with the colouring, and it was the same bicycle that had the scene. And this bicycle belonged to a young guy who was in for questioning over the murders. And that's what nailed him.
Yeah, he changed his story too many times.
Yes, and his cycle got him. So it went up to the Old Bailey, and I'm into the case. I wanted to hear this case. But at the end of the day, when the boy was found guilty of the double murder and he got sentenced to life, the hairs on my back of my head stood up because something was wrong here. He couldn't possibly have been the only person. Somebody was missing from the dock. The bodies had been put on a very heavy metal trolley,
Yep.
pushed through snow for a mile, and then lifted 2 meters in the air and put into the dumper truck.
Yeah.
This boy
Had help.
was a boy,
Yeah.
and he was about 5'6" tall
Yeah.
and thin. There's no way he could have moved these two bodies by himself. Somebody was missing from that dock.
Presumably that boy, obviously now a man, a murderer, knows the answer to that, and presumably he's still alive.
I would think he's probably out. Yeah.
Interesting.
I would think he's probably out a long time. In those days, he would have got double life. He would have probably done something like 20 years, 25 years, and then released. So he'd be well out now.
Yeah, and those poor kids died horrendously, didn't they?
Precisely. They actually had a state funeral in Southwark. Took him through the streets of Southwark, and people lined the routes.
Yeah,
you know.
good.
And it was Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, it's very sad.
It really was.
Really tragic.
And then we had the case of the missing girls. 2 girls went missing in Rotherhithe. And
How old were they?
5. No, sorry. I'm not sure. I think it was.
I can listen to Peter for hours, by the way.
I think it was 7 and 9. But they were best friends.
Yeah.
And they went missing.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd been missing for 3 days. And then one morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call. It was Professor Johnson. He said, "Peter, down to the mortuary immediately."
Fiery, wasn't he? Very fiery.
Yeah. And we went in, and there was this girl's body. And he said, "We still haven't found the other girl." But we dealt with the post-mortem. And 3 days after that, I was down in Penge, Bromley, shopping. And my bleeper went and said, "Go to the nearest police station. We'll get you back to the mortuary immediately." And they found the other girl. And the other girl was found, very, very interestingly, in a suitcase next door to the mother of the other dead girl. And what had happened was, the mother of the first dead girl had recently been released from Broadmoor Criminal Asylum, and nobody knew. The police didn't know. And throughout this investigation, they didn't know. She had killed both girls, and the second girl she put in a suitcase. Her next door neighbours were on holiday, but she had the key for the flat. And she took the body and the case into the next door neighbour and put it under the bed.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable. The police had no idea. And then we had to get the bodies of the second girl back to the mortuary from the flats, and still in the case. So we decided to take it in the case. And Cliff Smith, the SOCO, the scene of crime officer, took it in the case back to the mortuary. And when I got back to the mortuary, didn't get away with it. Some press photographer was there waiting. He got a snap of the case going in to the mortuary, but that was a very sad case.
Yeah, no, of course. Anything with children.
Yeah.
Anything.
Well, I had another one. I had 2 young children, and these were 2 and 3 years of age, in Herne Hill, found dead in bed, both together. And the mother had poisoned them and she'd gone to the police station and admitted it. And these poor little kids, but what made it worse, she'd put all the teddy bears and dolls and all the toys around them.
Yeah.
So it was, pretty
It's
disheartening.
mental health, isn't it?
Oh, it was terrible, terrible. So, we had a lot of child deaths, but when we had a child's death to do as a post-mortem, the mortuary went very quiet.
Right, yeah.
We always left until last, got the adult post-mortems out the way, and then it was very quiet. We got it over as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And then,
So one would expect a mortuary to be a really dour kind of place. And if we park aside post-mortems of children for obvious reasons, where you said it will be sensitive and you'll be quiet. Can you just? We've got a few moments. Can you just give us an overview what it was like to work in a mortuary? Was it a quiet, dour place?
Strangely enough, it wasn't cold. We had heating, believe it or not. And yes, it was a dour place, supposed to be.
It was meant to be,
But I decided to get the deputy. I put a record player in there, and I played Wagner's Ring Cycle over and over. Drove him completely mad. He hated it. So I used to wind him up by doing this.
So this is the corrupt guy that you just pissing him off.
So we always had music in the mortuary, in the post-mortem room, in the background. And then I used to do Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance.
You're a very cruel man, Peter. You're a very cruel man.
Policeman's lot is not a happy one. That really got to him. But no, the mortuary was a happy place.
Any gags? Any gags?
Lots of gags. We had, I had two girls working for me. I had Sally, and I had another one. I'm not going to name for obvious reasons in a moment. And they both worked for me, and I was known in the whole of London area. They were known as Charlie's Angels. They were known as Peter's Angels. So it was quite funny, really. Yeah, so then we had the serial killers. I dealt with the Stockwell Strangler. I had two of his cases. And of course, at the time, we knew it was a serial killer because of the pattern
his MO.
The police had worked out. What we didn't know was the second serial killer. We had another chap came through the mortuary and his victim. It was a man called Kelly. And Kelly was a drunk who was taken into custody at Clapham, put into a police cell with two other drunks. The following morning, when they opened the cell, one of the drunks was dead. And Kelly was sat in the corner with his socks off, laughing. He was arrested for the murder. When the police arrived to interrogate him, he suddenly admitted there were other murders. What are the murders? 18 of them.
It's unbelievable.
And it started in 1953, Christmas Eve, when he and his best friend came from Ireland to London. They were stood on King's Cross Station platform when Kelly suddenly got an urge to push his friend under the coming tube. That was the first death. Well, it was an accident. And he got a taste for this, pushing people under the tube. And he killed somebody in the park at Clapham Common. And the police who investigated him were convinced he did at least 16, but possibly 18 murders. But he came through our mortuary, as did his victim. And at the time, he just didn't know we were dealing with a serial killer.
No, and obviously the police didn't have that full coordination to put all of the.
That's right.
And if you could enlarge on the Stockwell Killer as well.
Oh, Erskine.
Because his MO was, reading about it, was quite straightforward, wasn't it? Elderly people.
Yeah, Erskine was a totally different kettle of fish. He would open windows at night of flats and go into pensioners' rooms and kill them. He also had two Polish men.
He raped them as well, didn't he?
Yes, he raped them. I don't want to be too graphic, but
no. Men and women.
Men and women. He would
rape them.
Do things.
Yep.
And when he got into the Old Bailey, he used to actually play with himself in the dock. So the judge used to send him down to the cells. He was a completely different case altogether. He was a psycho. And he got arrested because he used to go and get his benefits from the benefits office. And the police had now found a fingerprint which tied him into the frame.
So they knew it was him, they just had to get him.
Yeah, and the only way they could get him, they eventually found he went to get his benefits. So they went to the benefits office. And they waited, and they got him.
And also, because he obviously didn't just commit murders in Southwark, he committed murders throughout South London. Some of the other mortuaries.
But he made a mistake. He went north of the river.
Okay.
And he committed one of his murders north of the river, which rather made it a bit complex for the CID. Suddenly we've got another alike, but it's north of the river. It's out of the territory. And what had happened is the cleaner of this lady who was the victim in this block of flats had gone back the next day and noticed the television was missing. Until then, the body had gone to the mortuary, being treated as a natural death. But when she reported the missing television, went back to look at the body and discovered strangulation, with particular hemorrhages behind the ears, which gave it away that she'd been strangled. And of course, when you get into post-mortem, you've got a hyoid bone, which is a very small bone, that can only fracture by manual strangulation.
Okay. So when the pathologists, I just wanted to, if you could expand. So when the pathologists, so they would, when they would carry out private work, and they would all, when I say private work, they would be paid a fee for the carrying out a post-mortem. I can't remember what the fees were, you did tell me. But also in the hospitals, I think the post-mortem would last 2 to 3 hours, and they could do them in 10 minutes.
I had a pathologist.
Yeah. It's all about money.
Who came in to do a post-mortem.
Yeah.
I went upstairs to have a coffee, came down, he'd gone. Post-mortem finished.
And how much would they got paid for that?
But in those days, it was about £120.
Okay, so 30 years ago.
Yeah. But they all had mansions and they all had sports cars. Yeah. They all lived the life of a Riley, believe me. They made a fortune. But what happened, of course, they could do private work. Now, in a murder case, more often than not, there would be a second post-mortem for the defence.
Yeah.
So the defence would then hire a pathologist to go in and do a second post-mortem to get an opinion for the court for defence. Of course, it was all ironic because all the pathologists were best of friends.
Of course.
You're not going to do each other up, you know. So it even goes on today, second post-mortem, you know. So in those days, it was...
So that begs the question, if a post-mortem in a hospital would take 2 to 3 hours and they could do them in 10, 20, 30 minutes, there must be human error.
The average post-mortem in a public mortuary in those days, was 10 minutes. That was the average.
Okay.
The reason being that in a hospital, it's medical. Therefore, you are looking in great detail at all the organs, the actual veins, the arteries. Yeah. You're taking samples for toxicology and everything. Yeah. In a public mortuary, put it this way, if a car breaks down, it's going to be one of two things. It's either you've got a fuel problem or else you've got an electrical problem. Yep. It's very easy to diagnose. It's the same with the body. You go straight for the brain. Has it had a stroke? Straight for the heart. Is it a heart attack? And 9 times out of 10, you got the cause.
Right. Okay. It begs another question on that. Going back in time to when you were at the hospital, Cold War time, Cold War era. Would you be in your training, or was there any formal training to say when you're searching the body, you're looking for puncture wounds where there could be someone could have been?
Oh yes, I mean this is what the 5-year course was about. You know, you not only did anatomy, you did post-mortem appearances. So you're looking for signs on the body which would indicate something is wrong.
Some foul play, yeah.
You know, and I mean, if you've got a jaundiced person who's very yellow, that's going to probably be the liver. So you've got various signs that you're looking for. And on suspicion, you know, if you've got elastoplast or bandages on, you're going to remove them and have a look at them. So, and I mean, the body is examined front and back very, very carefully indeed for signs of any foul play.
Interesting.
I mean, there's one chap who actually, wasn't my case, but actually murdered his wife. His name was Barlow, by insulin, and parted the cheeks of the buttocks and injected, so it was hidden. And he was a nurse.
Okay.
And how he got caught, she was in the bath and she died in the bath. When the police arrived, he said he'd got her out of the bath and was resuscitating her. What he didn't account for, why was the water in the elbow area here, a little pool of water on her arm, which would have gone when he pulled her out the bath. And that's what caught him. They did toxicology and discovered insulin, and he'd overdosed her with insulin. So you see, every aspect of death, you've got to examine very, very carefully. There's lots of people out there who say, is there a perfect murder?
Yeah.
We'd never know if there's a perfect murder. But what is problematic at the moment, is that rumours are going around that murderers are putting bodies inside existing graves. And that creates a big problem. There's millions of graves out there.
One of the questions I wanted to talk to you about, and it's not really your thing, but police corruption, which is sort of a subject that I'm sort of fascinated and interested about. But you would have presumably not encountered necessarily police corruption, but you would have seen corrupt practices within the police.
Well, I mean, the whole book's about corruption. I mean,
Within the
the
police.
coroner's officers, who were police officers.
Yeah, I keep forgetting
You
that.
see, how it came about, you see, this corruption, how it got exposed.
Can I just interrupt you? Are coroner's officers today still ranked as police officers?
No, it's going into the civilian these days.
Civilian.
There still are police,
Yeah.
but most of them are now civilian.
Okay, sorry I interrupted you.
That's okay. How this thing got exposed in the first place was that a funeral director was asked by a coroner's officer in South London, not my mortuary, to put him up to be a Freemason and go on the square.
Yeah.
And the funeral director refused. And because of that, an argument ensued. They fell out, and the funeral director ended up phoning the police and saying, look, this is what's going on with the bodies. And what was going on was the coroner's officer was keeping money. And how it worked was, when a person died, the body would be transported by the funeral director to the mortuary, for which the funeral director would get £100 or plus £100.
From the council?
Yeah.
From the local authority?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened was, the funeral director did a deal with the coroner's officer that if the coroner's officer recommends him to the relatives to do the funeral, if he gets the funeral, he will then let the coroner's officer have the money for the transportation of the body. And that is why there was a coroner's officer in North London who owned an antique shop. So they were doing very, very nicely out of it.
And also there was a market for they were reusing coffins.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, my deputy, he was in the coffin trade at one stage.
Coffin trade.
He
used the coffin trade. How can it be a used coffin trade?
He had all these coffins he'd got somehow. He was selling them on.
That had dead bodies in them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, we had York Crematorium. We're going back 30 or 40 years. I think it was York Crematorium. They were getting the coffins coming in, going down to the crematoria.
Take the body out.
Coffin went out the back door, back to the funeral director. Body went into the crematorium. Same with flowers. All the flowers for the funeral, they would go back that day after the funeral to the florists. I mean, the things that were going on was incredible.
I'm sure that still happens.
It probably does. I mean, it's quite incredible.
Absolutely. And your bosses at the local authority, Southwark, just weren't interested at all in any of this, were they?
Turned a blind eye.
Just
They
not
didn't
interested
want
at
the
all.
hassle. I mean, fair dues. I think they tried to get them, but they didn't have the experience of what to do and how to do it. And they didn't want, you see, their ploy was, the whole council's ploy was, anybody who was bent in the council, quietly get rid of them. They don't want the embarrassment. So they would just get them to resign or sack them.
That's what happened with Operation Countryman.
Indeed.
So
Yeah.
a good friend of mine who's a Scotland Yard detective, senior Scotland Yard detective, I won't mention his name and get him in trouble or embarrassing. He was telling me when he was a young sergeant at up the road, Golders Green Station, when Operation Countryman was going on, one day he came in and his inspector wasn't there, and he was saying, "Oh, where's so and so? He's not here." Some people came in and had a word with him yesterday, and the word then came back that when they searched his house, they found a Rolls Royce in his garage. But he wasn't prosecuted. He was just allowed to quietly retire. And another really, really good example was, if this was me and you, we would both be in prison. There was a Detective Chief Superintendent Tony Lundy, who was taking $100,000 a year in cash bones. And when I say, not from drug dealers, but from the actual cartels in Mexico.
Right.
And he was ensuring safe passage. So when the big quantities of drugs came in, customs officers were bribed, he was bribed, and that they could get safe passage. And when Scotland Yard found out, I said, if that being me and you, we'd be in prison. But because he was a superintendent at Scotland Yard, he was allowed to retire on ill health
grounds.
And they gave him an enhanced police pension.
Yeah.
Didn't just get a police pension, he got an enhanced police pension.
Yeah.
And he was breaking the law.
Yeah, that was incredible. Countryman was incredible. I mean, Dulwich Police Station, the Flying Squad were based there, 14 of them on the top floor.
Yeah.
One morning, CIB2 went in, nicked a lot of them, all out in handcuffs. Yeah. I mean, it was an astonishing situation. I used to walk through Oxford Street and round Mayfair, and occasionally, I saw it 2 or 3 times, you'd pass a car, and inside the passenger seat, there'd be obviously a detective writing a statement form, and on the top it had Countryman, and the chap in the car on the wheel was obviously giving a statement, and it was so blatant, you know. But no, the problem with Countryman is very few people actually got done.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, they were all investigated and arrested, but very few actually got.
Yeah, I think it was over 250 officers were allowed to retire early. I mean, so they committed major criminal acts and weren't prosecuted.
The problem was they had a lot of evidence on a lot of them. And it was in a police station in Guildford, in a porter cabin. And one night, somebody set fire to it. Yeah. And the porter cabin just burnt out with all the evidence.
And Peter, you worked with probably one of the best investigative journalists in the UK, Roger Cook. How did you end up working with Roger Cook on the Cook Report?
Very strange, actually. Obviously, I had a lot of publicity. And
from the big court case exposing all of this.
Yeah, press and magazines, everything. And one night I got a telephone call from the producer of the Cook Report asking me to go to Carlton Television in Portman Square the next day and have a meeting with him. And he wanted me to do a program special for Cook on body harvesting and organ harvesting. So, which I agreed to do. And I went up to Nottingham to the headquarters, and they gave me a case, like spy case. It had everything in there. I had covert cameras and microphones. And so I set off on my quest. And I got quite a lot of people who were prepared to sell me organs and buy organs. And then, unfortunately, for us, there was a scandal. at a hospital in Liverpool, a children's hospital. And it was exposed, having a lot of organs for children in their pathology department. And it's headline news. And he killed our program dead. So then he
I
said...
thought the opposite. I think it would have made it more interesting.
You'd have thought so,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? So then they said, well, look, would you like to do another one, something else? So I ended up doing Occult and Witchcraft in Sussex.
Yeah, Lewis.
And, Lewis, yeah, where we discovered a murder. Well, we didn't discover it. It was already there, but people weren't bothering about it. So it's very interesting. But, so we were doing this occultism, and we got invited to attend a coven, a black coven, up on the Downs. But the problem was they do it skyclad, which means naked. Where do you put the camera?
It's all going your way. It's all going your
where
way.
do you put the camera? So anyway, we did the occult program, and we're getting it all in the can. And then there was a big problem with the News of the World and the slander, and the Cook report was pulled, so it never went out. So we never completed it. So, but they were a marvellous bunch, the Cook report, very professional.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Very professional.
Yeah, I mean, it's like World in Action. It's proper old-fashioned, investigative journalism, hard-hitting questions, holding power to account, unafraid to go to a minister with a camera and ask difficult questions. But there's none of that anymore.
There's
none of that.
Phil Braun, who was my producer, brilliant man. He was, for years, he was high up in the Daily Mirror. He worked on the Daily Mirror. And it was Phil who got me involved with Piers Morgan and the Mirror, which we're going to on another time.
Yeah, absolutely. In our next podcast. Peter, you've been an absolute superstar. I've been looking forward to doing this for so long. Last night I was awake with just reminding myself of the many questions that I wanted to ask you. So we'll look forward to the next podcast, and we'll do a little teaser for that in a moment. But what I just wanted to do was just thank your literary agent, Andrew Lownie. Firstly, we've got Peter's book, which is where I learned about Peter and his escapades and his exposure of the corruption, which is just fantastic. And then this is just fantastic. I've read this book, Traitor King by Andrew Lownie. And Andrew is, how would you describe, he's a very authoritative.
Oh, he's a historian.
He's fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's a man that he writes with integrity, and is very, very, and it's just really, really interesting. But this is all about Lord Mountbatten, and the files that are in the public domain about the royal family that they have censored from the royal family at public expense, and Andrew is using his own money to uncover the corruption within the royal family. And the $1 million question, which is really interesting, and it's exposed in this book, and I'll just a little teaser, is Lord Mount, in the book, Andrew's obtained the declassified FBI files that show that Lord Mountbatten was a paedophile and was raping kids in care in Northern Ireland in a care home called, the name's just gone from me. It'll come to me in a few moments. King Cora, the King Cora Boys Home. And yeah, it's a teaser for the book if you want to find out what happened and what's been going on. It's really, really interesting. So thank you to Andrew for supporting Peter, really, because I wouldn't have known about this had been for Andrew, and obviously Peter having to suffer all this. So yeah, thanks for all your hard work and for having the integrity to stand up and be counted, which is the most important thing.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks again. Cheers. So the $1 million question, Peter. No pressure. Was Princess Diana pregnant in your opinion, based on what you know?
On my opinion, well, first of all, Robert Thompson is one of the most loyal and honest people I know, and he's
in our conversations, you've only ever but said good things about him.
Yes, and he's gone public on it.
Yeah.
There's no question in his mind, with his expertise, she was not pregnant. However, I used to know Al Fayed quite well because I taught his daughter elocution. And Al Fayed was such an exhibitionist.
Yes.
Had Princess Di been pregnant, he would have sung like a canary from the first minute. The whole world would have known. So on those basis, or that basis, I would say definitely not pregnant.
Because when we talked about this off camera, and with our conversations that we've had about the mortuary service and the intelligence services, people can be bought. So people can be silenced with money, and they can also be silenced just by being compliant, i.e., Peter, we don't want you to discuss this with anyone. And if you're a person of the highest, integrity or utmost integrity, a lot of people will be compliant and not speak. So I remember saying to you, how do we know that he possibly wasn't bought or asked to be quiet? But I think you've answered that really with the Al Fayed issue.
I think it's no question of it. I mean, Al Fayed.
Yeah. I think
he boasted about everything. He was so wanting to be royal.
Yeah.
He would have sung from the treetops.
Being
pregnant.
There's no way he would have been able to keep that secret.
No.
I think
it's
that's
amazing it suddenly came out afterwards and not before the event.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Thank you for addressing that issue as always. You're a superstar, Peter.
Most welcome.
We'll put it in the podcast.